And our next presentation is from Benjamin at DIRTT.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. As she said, my name is Benjamin Urban. I am the CEO at DIRTT Environmental Solutions. Thank you all for joining us this afternoon. I'm looking forward to some dialogue at the end as well. So I'm going to move through the slides pretty quick to make sure that we leave enough time for that. DIRTT. So we are a leader in pre-manufactured modular construction through technology. We're over 20 years old. We've been publicly traded for 11 years. We operate in both the United States as well as Canada as far as manufacturing locations. About 850 employees and roughly 750,000 square feet of manufacturing under roof. We've shipped over $2 billion worth of product, and nearly half of the Fortune 500 are DIRTT customers. Additionally, this year we were awarded #1 in manufacturing by Fast Company, most innovative companies globally. We were also just awarded this month with Canada's safest manufacturing employer in the industrial sector by the Canadian Occupational Safety. So what do we do, and why do customers typically choose us as an alternative method to conventional construction? Typically, most of our consumers choose us for one of 5 reasons. One could be speed. We typically have a schedule compression of what could be months for commercial or workspace interiors to what could be even up to a year for healthcare or a hospital that we're deployed on. Another reason could be performance. That could be aesthetic. It could be a rating, so like a fire rated partition. It could also be around warranty. So performance is one reason. Reconfigurability is a third. We also call that design for disassembly, in that all of our solutions have the ability to be modified and relocated as necessary. Financial, because our product does qualify as personal property, it does introduce some more sophisticated ways to account for it from a financial basis. It does depreciate on an accelerated schedule versus conventional construction. And then I'd say lastly would be sustainability. And that's not just how we procure materials, but our entire system is engineered in a way such that it should never end up in a landfill. So it's simply another way to reduce global greenhouse gas footprint. This is a great slide to show you what those different solutions can look like. I mentioned that it is technology enabled, and so I'm going to touch on the technology here in a minute, but it does allow for mass customization. So this is more of a generic version showing glass partitions, solid partitions. It also shows casework. Structural mass timber is the structural element there, as well as raised access flooring and connected infrastructure, which would include modular power, as well as fiber deep networks. Underpinning everything that we do is our proprietary ICE software. It doesn't only do configuration, visualization, engineering, and automation, but it also allows for mass customization. Through that infinite customization, we still maintain a 10-day lead time because of this proprietary software. We also use this as a SaaS platform that is commercialized. So we have half a dozen manufacturers that are currently using this platform for the same reasons that we utilize it. We've also actually have 2 others that we're onboarding as we speak. We're also seeing expanded or strong demand in 2026 in the end of the year for existing customers to continue to build out their versions of the same software technology. The primary verticals that we operate in are commercial, office or workspace, healthcare, government, education. We've also expanded into aviation sectors as well as life science, and we're starting to see those different verticals expand. So this is showing what the TAM is for us purely in prefabricated manufactured solutions. So that $40 billion is what I would say is more aligned with our typical construction partners that we pursue. Through diversification and innovation, we are actually able now to expand that TAM even further into conventional construction through our, what we're now calling Construction Services Division. Previously, we had referred to it as Integrated Solutions, but as we've continued to evolve and develop that part of our business, we're actually seeing expansion into true drywall replacement. We have roughly 40 DIRTT sales representatives and over 70 construction partners in North America. Yes, Alan? Yeah.
What do you mean by drywall?
Yeah, so sheetrock, so conventional construction. So behind this brick, which is probably a veneer, is drywall, right? Yeah. So it's us replacing that one for one with a pre-manufactured solution from one of our factories.
Is it still drywall?
No, it's not. So it depends on what the solution is. Typically, it's an either MDF, if it doesn't need to be a rated partition. If it's a rated, then what we use is a magnesium oxide board or a non-combustible. So we do full operating rooms, bathrooms. We're in the middle of doing airports as well. So DFW Airport washroom renovations are all of our product. Yeah. So this is just to give you an example of what our current coverage looks like from what I'll call our traditional construction or distribution partners. We have 40 direct sales representatives that support them. And then within that, 70 of these partners, they represent roughly 140 different physical brick and mortar, what we call experience centers. You could also call it a showroom. In the last 18 months, I mentioned that we've diversified the channel as well. And so by diversifying, what I mean by that is we've created a direct channel to general contractors. Historically, we've delivered services through furniture dealer partners, so your Miller Knoll dealers, Steelcase, Hayworth, others. There are a few that are true general contractors in that mix, but the majority are through a furniture dealer channel. When I was talking about expanding the channel and expanding the TAM, our construction services group allows us now to transact directly with general contractors. And why that's important to us is for our ability to scale, we currently have about 400 million in capacity. And if we do, let's say 175 million, clearly we're only halfway there in utilization of what that excess capacity is. Of that 175, more than 90% of it is the furniture dealer partner model. The direct model that we've stood up over the last 18 months, and that's where we're seeing significant expansion in our overall pipeline and growth into 2026. That's only through a handful, let's say 3 to 6 large general contractors. And why that's so impactful is for these large general contractors, they also have a self-perform division. So if you pick one of the larger ones that does 10 billion annually in construction services work, $1 billion of that is self-perform work. And so that is a Bird or PCL, any of the top 10 in the United States general contractors where they have, let's say, 1,000 drywallers, carpenters, glazers, et cetera, on staff, electricians. That is their also highest margin revenue stream for these GCs. They want to expand that as well. The challenge that they have is people. And so skilled trades, there aren't 3 times the amount of skilled trades out there for them to triple the amount of self-perform work that they want to do. DIRTT, conveniently, is a 3x multiplier. So because it is prefabricated offsite, when it shows up on site, that speed acceleration that I was talking about in the schedule compression allows them to install it 3 times faster than drywall, magnesium oxide, all those different conventional construction methods, such that for them, now they have the ability to triple the amount of labor that they actually are able to bill out. Alan.
So when you are putting together the product in your plants,
Yeah.
are you using, is it a question of your process, or are some of the skilled workers there?
Yeah, no. So it removes that skilled worker from that entire chain. So no, they are not. They are your $20 an hour factory workers that are truly manufacturing with raw materials, be that aluminum, MDF, as you mentioned, or we discussed MagRock. Yeah.
Sorry, somebody opened the floor for questions.
Yes.
No, don't be. The 10% that you mentioned, is that kind of a general rule of thumb for the large GCs that 10% of their overall revenue would be self-perform? or is that just a number you threw out there? Is that a good benchmark?
So, it's a good benchmark, and that is from the smallest of the top, I can't name the name, the smallest of the top 10 general contractors in the United States, 10 billion in backlog, $1 billion in self-perform. That also tends to correlate to other GCs. Part of it is the underlying nature of they can't get any more skilled trades. So even if they wanted it to be 10, 20, 30%, 10 is pretty much as high as they can get, and then it's saturated. There just aren't enough people for them to do more of it on their own.
Sorry, one more follow-up.
Yeah.
Would you venture a guess what you said is the highest margin for the GC, that 10% self-perform? Can you give us an idea of what that is relative to the other 90%?
Yeah. So on average, when a general contractor delivers a project, they will end up somewhere between 5 and 7% net profit. Through the actual self-perform, it's threefold or fourfold that. So they're looking at margins in the 20% range versus 5 to 7. I had mentioned half of the Fortune 500 are DIRTT customers currently. So in fact, many of you probably have been in an office or a building that was actually DIRTT material and probably didn't even know it. That's actually when we've done a really good job. And the reason I say that is because of that software that underpins everything, it allows us mass customization, which also then allows for self-expression. So for us, no project would be the same. So if you went into a Google build out, which is all DIRTT, it will look entirely different than a Microsoft build out. So even though they're in the same vertical, you would have no idea that that product is actually manufactured off-site by us. Yes?
For context, I look at these customers for the, let's say, interior build out that they do. What's the cost to them typically per square foot? And what improvement can you offer?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So around the cost per square foot, or I'll just say cost comparison of what we do to conventional construction, right? So we could talk all day long about, okay, what's the cost per square foot for healthcare versus education? They're totally disparate. However, so when we go through our furniture dealer channel, we tend to be somewhere, if you're starting at a commercial workspace location, we could be as high as a 20% premium. As you get more complex towards, let's say, a healthcare delivery where we're doing an ambulatory surgery center or something, we tend to be cost neutral even through our furniture dealer channel. Once we go through a general contractor in a direct channel, we are absolutely cost neutral regardless of workplace, healthcare, education, government, simply because it's direct to the GC. And so that's where all of a sudden we have this ability to supplant conventional construction or drywall with DIRTT as that solution.
I was looking for dollars per square foot.
It's an elusive one. So put it this way, if you've got a project that's, let's say, $200 a square foot, right? In a commercial office, call it $40 a square foot premium. If you're spending $400 a square foot for a hospital or more, zero. There is no delta. If anything, it could be, depending on the purpose of it, right? It could actually be less. So if it's a high acuity med gases, head walls, things of that nature, we will actually be less. So on a $400 per square foot, you may have $20 to $40 per square foot savings by going down this path. That's just apples to apples day one construction. Where this becomes more important for a service industry like healthcare is that commercial office, they have some flexibility. When they open, doesn't necessarily mean they're not going to be turning revenue through it. For a hospital, if they were to build and move in a year early, that's a year of operating income that they wouldn't have if they built it conventionally. Yeah, so we have done a couple boutique hotels actually. What's changed for why we haven't pursued it, or multifamily for that matter in the past, we didn't have a fire rated partition. That was the barrier to entry for us, in that if we're just adding our solution on top of a drywall fire rated partition, it's not cost competitive. Now that we have our own fire rated partition that doesn't use any drywall and is apples to apples cost competitive, now we can expand into hospitality, multifamily. Predominantly where we're focusing now is actually in higher ed, so dormitories. So where in the past we couldn't perform there, now we can actually do every partition in those spaces.
So looking a little bit further back, right? I don't know that much about your company. So
Yeah.
So like, if you compare your numbers now versus what you were pre-COVID,
Yeah.
your sales are down by, your stock price is down by 70%.
Yeah.
80%. How do I think about telling a story from scratch? You've been a public company for 11 years. Like, where are you now relative to today? What happened? What changed?
That's a lot. 30 seconds or less, yeah. So clearly COVID had an impact, right? But more so on the commercial office industry than for healthcare per se. So if you were to look at our actual project or vertical mix pre-COVID to what it is now, pre-COVID it was 85% commercial office space. The remainder was maybe 10% healthcare, and then the leftover government and education. Last quarter, or we'll just use 2024 as a benchmark, 55% of that was commercial office. So 30% of that has effectively transitioned roughly to healthcare, with the remainder then being government and education. There's a lot of variables in what happened to where we are now, but in its most simple terms, 2022 was full turnaround. So bifurcating COVID, bifurcating previous management in the path we were on, we effectively used that as a reset. So in its most simple terms, 2023 turnaround, or 22's turnaround, 23 proving profitability, 24 building blocks for expansion and growth and leaning into the corporate strategy to where we are now. Yes, there is an air bubble in there. Well, I'm just going to call it that with regards to tariffs, which I'll unpack here a little bit. But it's actually a great segue to talk about where we are now. So we're fully on the other side of a turnaround. We are now engaged in the execution of the business transformation. So I'm going to separate the restructuring. That's not transformational per se. It got us profitable. The next challenge was how do we actually transform the business to support the work that we've actually managed to make to this point? At the same time, also executing on the corporate strategy of growth. That construction services group is clearly a significant portion of that growth. And you'll start to see that coming into Q1. Once that represents more than 10% of our revenue, we will account for that separately. So you'll have visibility into seeing what that diversified channel is doing for us from a growth perspective. So further to that, right, I'll talk on tariffs a little bit. So up until Q2, we actually had 8 positive adjusted EBITDA quarters. Tariffs clearly impacted us. We also disclosed this in the last earnings release that we anticipated that by Q3, due to the mitigating efforts that we had implemented, that we would be covered and be positive EBITDA in Q3, and then back to what I would call more normal operating for us by Q4 and similar EBITDA expansion. That's all showing to be true. So there's that piece of it, which I encourage you guys to listen in on our earnings release on November 6th. So we'll dig into that a little bit, but also balanced with that is the pipeline. So we also disclosed that we are seeing not just expansion in the pipeline, but the tariffs also forced us to recalibrate. So if you were to go back all of 2024 and you looked at what we call push out, so what projects that were supposed to end up in a quarter and then pushed into the next or pushed into the next year, on average, it was 18 to 19% every quarter. Q2 was 27%. And so we simply didn't have visibility into what that was going to look like. Those projects didn't disappear, and we're not talking tens of millions of dollars, right? For us on a quarterly basis, 3 or 4 can have that amount of compression that moved not just 3 months, but most of them moved into Q2 of next year. Even discounting that out, when we recalibrated, the pipeline that we disclosed in Q2, which is roughly $330 million, continues to expand. We're seeing similar numbers, but if you were to take the same pipeline number, even though it's significantly higher than it was in 2024, when we had confidence around the guidance that we gave, That was also assuming a much more